Welcome to Startups Simplified. Martyn, how are you, Chief?
Good morning. Excellent, thank you. Thank you for inviting me into this very nice office.
Nice. Okay, let me start with this part. I keep reading you on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Right. And I've always been intrigued. Okay, where is this guy coming from?
Yeah.
Because you also are part of an angel group and an angel investment group.
Yeah.
And you are running your own startup.
To an extent, yes.
To an extent, yes. Right. And your posts are very intriguing. Right. I mean, to some extent, it's VC bashing at times.
Sometimes, yeah.
It makes a lot of sense, most of the posts, because they're backed by data. So I was very intrigued and I wanted to have this chat with you. But before we get into all of that, for our viewers, let's just get to know you a bit better.
Okay.
Right? Who are you? What do you do? And what are you doing in Indonesia?
Right, so my name is Martyn Terpilowski. I'm from the UK. When I was 22 years of age, I moved to Tokyo to work in finance. And I worked in finance for 16 years, 12 years in Tokyo and 4 years in Hong Kong. During that time, I dealt with a lot of family offices. I worked in the hedge fund space. I was a broker. So yeah, we're dealing with ultra high net worth family offices. Then I got actually hired by the client side. So I was on the sales side most of the time, and at the end I was on the buy side. So I was a responsible officer for a family office in Hong Kong. I did a lot of finance. Got a lot of relationships through that.
Sure.
And when I was 38 years of age, I decided I needed some time out. I started at 22, and I just went traveling. And by coincidence, through my network that had been built up, I did know some people in Indonesia. And I actually came here to meet some of my old connections, and we discussed doing deals together, doing some things together with some of my Japanese connections. And effectively, some of these things we considered never happened. But during the process, I talked to a lot of kind of people with kind of influence and connections here who suggested that, there's a real opportunity in Indonesia to build technology here.
When was this?
This was about 6 years ago.
6 years ago.
So okay. I basically retired early, I would say. Didn't know what I was going to do at 38. I took a few years of doing very little. I started a small investment company in Singapore with the concept of being an angel in multiple companies.
Okay.
The problem was, it's very hard there because you're just a nominee shareholder.
Yep.
So I decided if I want to do this proper, I have to do a lot of research, decide what I'm going to do, stick to it, whatever the problems, make sure it's not a money burning thing, and go ahead and do it. So I eventually started a PMA.
Okay.
And with some minority local investors. The vast majority of the money was from myself and from my Japanese connections.
Okay.
That's how I got to Indonesia. It all came about discussing things with people, including the ex-science minister of Indonesia, other people connected to ministers and ministers, discussing these potential opportunities, this huge market. But how the current investment market is very related to B2C, because that's how you can blow the valuations up. For me, I couldn't see a lot of the stuff I was seeing. I thought, well, that's not going to make money. It hasn't made money anywhere else. Why would it make money here? There's multiple arguments I can put forward, but most people don't want to discuss it. So effectively, I decided I had to do something different, but there is a real challenge doing B2B and B2G. And since I've done it, I've realized why they don't do it. Even though you don't have these burn rates, it's very hard to get under the table. Use cases in new technology. However, having spent 5 years pushing the boundaries, now we have distributors who usually just distribute foreign software.
Sure.
So now some of the big distributors are selling Indonesian local software for the first time. So we have now got to that stage, but it has been a challenge. So I've got no technology background. I just have a business background, and I have close connections who also have business background.
Sure.
We are a bit older with experience, so our concepts are very, very different.
What is the core concept of the startup which you run right now?
What we do, it's actually what you call geospatial technology, location analytics. So I've got no tech background at all, and sometimes I sit in meetings here when people are talking about these ideas, and I just sit there and think, that's just crazy. But when I heard a few years ago about this, when I was talking to, actually some minister's son, and he was talking about geospatial and location analytics. To me, it was quite simple. Indonesia has a huge amount of data, and it is logistically challenged. But not, at the moment, no one is actually using that data in a way that's understandable to help multiple companies.
Okay.
Now, I knew nothing about this. This was suggested to me. I went to Bali to spend a few weeks researching. I looked in the US. There's about 75 companies doing this in the US. I even looked, even China now has a couple of $1 billion companies doing this.
Sure.
Here, there's a few consultants, imported engines, but then you have to build this.
Well, haven't the ride-hailing companies done this? Be it the Grab or the Gojeks of the world, they've done POI data.
They've done POI data. They have collected. The thing is with these guys, they try to do everything. That's the reality. Yes, Grab particularly, I think, has their own map. No problem. They don't do location analytics. They don't have statistical data, live telco data that they sell to the clients to make business decisions.
Okay, let's just simplify this in a very layman's term for someone who's completely non-tech.
Yeah.
What exactly does your company do?
Right. So XXI Cinema have saturated the Japanese market. The Jakarta market.
Okay.
And they want to build cinemas all over Indonesia.
Okay.
How do they find the right locations regarding the potential customer that they're targeting? In the past, they've been very agent driven. Agent calls them, says this is the right place. It might not be.
Okay.
They're now building standalone cinemas. So effectively, they use our software to find the customers that they want, where they're going to build the next cinema. Okay. So they can look at what works in Jakarta, and they look at the positive. Our software can work out the positive impacts, like what kind of area, what socio-economic status, what kind of foot traffic, what kind of access. We can work out what our software can work out. Right, that's successful in Jakarta, and then our machine learning will back that algorithm into a second or third city, so that they open in a similar area in Solo, in Semarang, or things like that. So that's one of our modules. Okay. So we've gone beyond that now. We link our module now to the POS of these companies.
POS service.
Yeah, so we link it to the POS, so the point of sale. So for example, ST Indonesia, when people go and buy ST Indonesia, so they combine all the data from our software, which is all kind of demographic data, telco data, statistical data, plus it's linked to their point of sale data. So effectively, they can not just expand into new stores, but also forecasting sales, what product to sell in what stores. So we're talking to all kinds of companies. So it's not just it's not just F&B and retail, which is obviously the main target. We do data visualization for the government. We help the BUMN monetize their data, because they've got lots of data, but it's not in a form that can be sold. We actually put it in a software so it can be used by other corporations.
Sure.
We on the FMCG side, we have an app linked to our software where we have a salesman app, where effectively companies like Dua Berlian, which distributes SC Johnson products in Indonesia, can use our software to manage all their sales team as well. And also on top of that, we can do white space analysis, so we can look at what Toko Kelontong they are not servicing at the moment, particularly on the outer islands and places which don't have the same data there. So there's a lot of data, but it's not organized.
Sure.
A lot of it's in spreadsheets. What we do, firstly, we can just be visualizing the data. We can do dashboard as a service. But what we usually do is we combine our data and their data in our software to make predictions.
Okay.
So if you look at people like Boston Consulting have come out and said, this is between 30% and 100% it can impact beneficially. It can impact. This can be from your revenue to your customer satisfaction. So there's a lot of information out there.
Sure.
Now, in the last few years, this sector has grown globally, one of the fastest growing sectors. In Asia, it is growing exponentially, but it's still early here.
Yeah.
It's very early here, and that's because it's not a VC thing. They think it takes too long. The problem is...
Does it take too long?
It took me 5 years to get a lot of the biggest clients in the country.
Sure.
And I've spent a lot less money than a lot of the startups have.
How did you sustain the first 5 years?
My money and my friends' money. Okay. I mean, we've all had careers. So one of the things is I don't get a salary. I'm not sat in the office taking 200 to 300 million like founders seem to be. Okay. I don't fully understand that. Sure. I am the founder. I am the majority shareholder in the company. I put most of the money up myself.
So it's all completely bootstrapped?
Well, yeah, I mean, kind of high-end bootstrap, but yes, yes. So effectively, we have 2 family offices that we brought in local, who we know personally, and they are very good support for us.
Sure.
Quite well-known people, but they are very minority in our company. So the rest of it, yeah, is from myself and my close friends, basically from finance background. So we all have a different outlook than the startup world, I think. We don't necessarily have the expertise on software at all. That's why we hire the professionals. So I've got people from the top, people who went to Oxford, people who went to Cambridge, people who went to Singapore universities, UGM, ITB, UI. They run the business. They run that. All I do is sign the finances and bring in the relationships. But I mean, this is a business that I think everybody needs. And it's once you get the use cases, the issue is the use cases. When we first started, getting the use cases is very, very hard.
Yeah.
But, and of course we got hit by COVID. And at the beginning, F&B and retail. And when COVID happened, I was just sitting there thinking, great. I retired at 38, and I'm going to manage to spend all my money now in 2 years. In 2 years, that's clever, isn't it? So yeah, there's been times in the last few years when I thought, oh my God, this is a nightmare. But yeah, now we've got Astra as a client, XXI, Janji, Jiwa, Nabati Group. So we've got a lot of big players, and now we've done 5 years, we're talking to the big distributors.
Sure.
So Metronet Telecom Group is introducing our product to Telecom Property and others. So we've passed that now.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, no doubt heart, B2B and B2G, you've got to be a bit of a psychopath.
I'm sure.
You've got to be pushing every day, and you've got to have the right partners. And it's not easy. But I think determination was one thing. Again, we'll discuss it later. A lot of people told you can't do this. I mean, that's a silly thing to say to people, who've been successful in their... people who've been very successful in their previous life without any parental help. When other people who've only had parental help sit there and go, oh, you can never do this, you'll never do this. It just makes you more determined to do it, And I think, I think that just...
It's a very touchy topic. It's a very touchy topic. And I hear you completely, because this generally happens. I mean, whenever anyone is willing to start something new, something which is slightly more riskier, people just tend to shoo it off. They're more of an opinion that, hey, why you want to do this? You're making good money. Why you want to take this risk? I mean, it's just a massive why, and at times it starts playing in your head as well, right? Especially when you're down, like COVID, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, of course, there has been time. I will not sit there and say the last 5 years of my life have been very easy. We incorporated our company on the 8th of October 2018, so we've just passed 5 years. But we started planning for this probably second quarter 2018, when I was talking to some of my connections here saying, will you help me, and then COVID coming and the slowdown. But yeah, it hasn't been easy at all. And yeah, B2B and B2Gs, people are right in one respect. They are very hard to do.
Correct.
That's why people don't do them. So I mean, Alan Helliwell was saying to me, it's people don't think that can work. And it is hard, and you've got to push and push and push. But the other side of that is your costs are nowhere near the same, and you have an actual product. I set up to build a product, a generational product. I didn't set up to flip the business. If you build a business quick, well, and successful, and make sure your infrastructure is good, and you're the best, and everybody uses you, you don't need to constantly talk about valuation to people. You don't need to. I don't think any generational company has ever been founded when it was founded with the idea of selling again.
Sure.
And that's what's happened.
I think it's a recent phenomena.
It is a recent phenomenon, but it hasn't worked.
I mean, we will have a much detailed chat on this part.
So for us, my thoughts were a bit different. Sure. Number one, the people coming in were experienced people with a lot of resources, the partners, but it was their own money, and I was working for free. And not, I'm not going to, I don't go to all these startup events and everything. It's not, I'm going looking for clients, not going to talk to people who are my competitors. I don't really understand the whole model. So yeah, but I would accept that B2B and B2G is hard. That's why people don't do it. You've got to have connection, and you've got to be very pushy. You've got to keep going, because people will try to copy your idea. People will try to hire your staff and do the same.
Correct.
People will say, we don't need this, we're already successful. There's multiple, you get blocked at the mid-level, you have to go to the top over these people. It isn't easy. I wouldn't say B2, and if I didn't have my own resources and my close friends' resources, it would have been difficult.
Sure.
Because it isn't a business that the venture capital are interested in, or wasn't. That might be changing. As we're about, over the last 5 years, we're probably one of the only companies that haven't had layoffs and stuff like that. We're still hiring. We're not impacted by all this, what goes on in the market in the same way. Slowdown to me doesn't matter because I'm not involved with this. It's like a two-tier system. I don't mix in the same circles. I've been at breakfast this morning called Castle Asia. That's where the top businessmen meet in Indonesia, to be honest. They don't meet at the Deal Street thing. That's just a load of people trying to get money off each other.
Okay.
You should be looking for clients. For me, my advice to any of these people is look for clients. Why are you looking for people who don't have a budget? Everyone at these events is looking for money. How are you going to sell your software when they're looking for money? It's just illogical. But the problem is, if you go and sit down at these events and you meet the CEO of MAP and the CEO of Danone, they're not really interested in fast talking.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get the great bro. It's not going to happen.
Sure.
So they don't want to expose themselves to that, and that is the issue. I think that this bro world, it's like crypto bro, VC bro. Everybody likes patting each other on the back. Nobody wants to talk about anything. Nobody wants to discuss anything if you don't agree with everything. So, my advice to a lot of these guys is get out and meet clients. Clients who can pay you, like the big corporates who can pay you.
But I'll just be a devil's advocate over here, right? But there are a lot of VC-backed B2B SaaS companies who are doing really, really well.
I don't know how many. I don't know.
I'll give you an example of a company which I work for. I was leading sales for them in Indonesia. It's called Insider. It's backed by Sequoia.
It's not here though, is it? It's not started here.
No. It's started in
I totally understand.
Istanbul.
Of course, in other countries there are companies doing. Yes, B2B, especially now, is becoming more and more.
Yeah, even in India. There are like a lot of amazing B2B SaaS companies.
First of all, I would say I've never been exposed to venture capital in my life until I came here. I worked in listed securities.
Okay.
If you're talking about P ratio, stocks, listed Japanese equity, I understand it inside out. Did it for a long time. I don't understand this other model. So when you talk about other countries, yes, I agree with you, but I'm just exposed myself to here.
Indonesia.
Here, we're one of the only ones, and that's because it's hard here.
Sure.
I think it's probably a lot easier if you're doing it in other countries because it's a different model, right? Here, one of the problems with B2B and B2G is people fear their jobs. Forget what we do. I mean, what we do has a lot of impact on things which are sensitive subjects. Corruption. Our software is a data management system which basically will point out what are these people telling me the truth if I'm the company owner, or are people having a laugh, or if I'm a minister, is this happening? Is this being distributed properly? So, the minister or the owner, the family of the business can monitor everything using my software. So you can imagine why the people below them perhaps don't think it's so good. So that's one issue here. The other issue here is there has been no interest, despite the fact that they talk a lot about downstreaming. There's no interest in selling.
What do you mean by downstreaming?
Well, at the moment, everyone's talking about downstreaming in the nickel and all that, right? And that's always what they talk about. And let's build our own technology. The problem you've got with that is, as a startup, no one will distribute your product until you're 5 years old. So if you're a startup and you don't have the connection, it's very hard to get your product on the market because it's hard to sell because the mid-level don't want. The quickest way to distribute your product, like SAP and people like that, distribute their products with third parties here. But then third parties only deal with foreign entities because they don't trust new startups. So how do you get from 0 to 5? That's too much of a risk for a lot of venture capitals, right? So you just don't see it here. And I do see that. I mean, I talked to some of the big system integrators, as they call them, which are the distributors. They didn't want to talk to me after 2.5, 3 years. Now 5 years, now Astra, now XXI, now BPM, now government, BSSN, now they want to talk to me. But most people...
Why do you think that is the case? Because you have established credibility of the product?
Established credibility. We're not boom and bust. We haven't. It's a totally different model. We're not losing $20 million a year or anything like that. It's a steady state. We don't have the revenue that some of these companies claim they have, but we have significant revenue now.
You're profitable now?
About flat. About flat, yeah. So it's not bad, but we haven't, the amount, because we're spending more on R&D, that's why.
Sure.
So our infrastructure's changed and everything. So yeah, I mean, we're not, our revenue numbers, it's not like made 100, lost 100 kind of thing. It's smaller numbers, obviously, because it's B2B, but the potential is very big. There are several $1 billion companies in China doing what we do, in India doing what we do.
Yeah.
But getting to that stage is hard because in that first 5 years, I mean, I'm an aggressive person in sales, and I don't perhaps look like other people do. I don't treat people I meet, company owners, as celebrities. Here, businessmen are celebrities. You know, when I was a family office, I used to deal with these guys all the time. I used to deal with some of the biggest oligarchs in Asia. So I'm used to talking to these people. So I don't go into meetings and like this. You know, it's a different model. I treat these people as a same level. But the problem is often to sell our software, we have to go to the top people. Yeah. So building up a huge sales team like a lot of the B2C guys do, or the B2B small cost. Yeah. Our software starts at 25 grand. You know, it's not
25 grand a year.
Yeah. It's not $100. So getting a load of salespeople to go knock on everyone's door doesn't work. We found that out quite early. It doesn't work. So what we've had to do is use connections to get in the top, and the ones we've been established, distribute within. So now we're trying to get distributed throughout Astra.
Sure.
We're trying to get people like Metrodata, people like Telcom Sigma to distribute. We've already got a few of them, they're all called Metro or something. Metronet, which is a telecom company, they are distributing our product within BUMN, right? These guys have hundreds of salespeople with the right connections to do it. That's what holds you back at the beginning, because you don't have that. So what we've done it by really like basically me and a couple of other guys knocking on doors with the right people and pushing like crazy. But it's not easy, and if you don't, and I don't think just being I think here you've got to really push it hard, and I think it's a hard option because you can't come out and say the company's worth 300 million like some of these other guys do based on population. So there's two things in it. It's harder. It's less likely you can just blow the price up. However, it's far more sustainable, and I would expect within the next few years we'll be clearing huge profits. Sure. Now we've got that 5 years in, and we're getting more and more, and we're also upselling all the time. Our product's getting better. We do spend on R&D. That's why we're not profitable, to be honest. Sure. We will be quite profitable now, but last year we spent a lot on R&D. We brought a guy in who'd been at Oxford and Cambridge in the UK, spent 10 years in data in the UK. We're talking to a few people who returnees, so they cost a lot more. So our cost is going up, to be honest. But different model, boss.
It's absolutely different model. I completely understand. I mean, look, I've been in enterprise sales in Indonesia as well for my first 5-6 years.
Yeah, so you'll understand the town, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I've closed deals ranging from 50K a year to 250K a year.
Yeah.
And it comes with its own sets of challenges. Yeah. The market is very unique in that perspective. Yeah. I completely understand. Have you pitched to a venture capital with this particular product of yours?
Not exactly. When we first came, a few this is starting on a bad footing. A few guys called me because they see what we're doing, and somebody introduced me. So one of the people who sits on my board's father was a very senior position at Astra. He knows everybody, so he's in that network.
Sure.
So he was trying to introduce me to people. I think we're off on a bad footing because people come and tell you, they don't come and listen. It's that from my experience, there was I met 3 or 4 at the early, and I decided to stop it at this stage.
Okay.
Because it was just I don't appreciate at my age having somebody sit there smoking during meetings, and that's what I found happened quite a lot.
But isn't that a cultural thing over here?
Cultural thing as much as it wants. It doesn't work with me. I mean, I'm not impressed by the fact that this guy got his job at 25 because who his father is. I don't care. It doesn't bother me, and he certainly doesn't know the market as good as I do. And there's nothing in his background to say that he's any good at anything. He's never returned any money to investors. So if you're not interested, that's fine. But don't turn up and give it the big one. And I had it a few times, and then I cut it off. To be honest, I don't need it. I have individuals in my company who are extremely wealthy, partners of mine, and who believe in the long-term story.
Sure.
And really, we can't have some guy on the board speaking to us like we're idiots. We're not the people going around kissing backsides at Deal Street Asia, We're basically all self-made millionaires. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
Sure.
So that relationship of like the way that what gets me and what's got me into a few disagreements is the way that the VCs sometimes speak on social media about their portfolio, like in a kind of, who do these, people, startups need to learn, like, oh, this is nonsense.
So startups need to learn,
and then this nonsense, you read it, and I'm thinking, mate, you're 25 or 30, you've never had a proper job, And you sat there and you call yourself an investor, and you're not an investor, you're using somebody else's money. You're an employee of a fund, calm down. You've not got any, you're using OPM. You can't list yourself as an investor if you work in a fund. You're not an investor. So you claim yourself, you've got business cards saying investor when you're not. And then you're speaking to people like, this is why I had a disagreement with a few guys. Startups need to learn, and all this, we will only give you money. What do you mean we? It's not your money. The arrogance I found ridiculous. In fact, for the performance, I have never seen anything like it. It is the asset class here is one of the worst performing assets I've ever seen. But that we've got incredible arrogance about the ability to do stuff, and that I saw it multiple times. Not everybody, of course, not everybody. I've met some decent guys, and we just said it probably ain't going to work because number one, I'm not willing to give 30% of my company up because I don't need to. And I'd rather still own over 50% of the company.
Sure.
And that's for me more interesting than having 1% of a number that's made up.
Sure.
Because the fact in the matter is people can talk about paper profits as much as they want. I saw comments the other day, you just look at the underlying portfolio, and if you understand, you realise that's nonsense. Ask for your money back. Don't roll over, we're going to open a new fund, existing people roll over. That's the oldest trick in the book. Get your money back. Come on, just ask for 10 million back. I don't think a lot of it will be there, so...
What do you think fundamentally, according to you, this we are coming to what we started this conversation with, right? I mean, there's a lot of... You have a lot of commentary about venture capital and the startup ecosystem as such. What, according to you, is fundamentally the problem?
It's a backslapping thing.
Okay.
It's everyone just backslaps, everyone...
Expand it a bit further.
Yeah, well, you see all these things like the Deal Street thing last week. It's just people going and congratulating each other. And people desperate for money, talking to people who've got money. It's not their money, but they think it is. So there's a big, somebody puts something on LinkedIn which is kind of offensive and he gets 1,000 likes. These people are more like celebrities than financiers. They don't have a financial background, most of them. They seem to think an MBA allows you to do anything. Last time I checked, you can't be a brain surgeon or a pilot with an MBA. So why do people think if they've got an MBA from an Ivy League university, they can be a fund manager? Because all of them think they're much cleverer than me because I don't have an MBA, right? And I went to a normal university, but I've got life experience. There's a lack of respect for life experience in what I'm related to him, that makes me really good at this. So I think the people running it are the wrong people. There is not all of them, but you need more meritocracy. If you people talk about finance. A lot of the guys in finance who get to the top were barrow boys back in London in the 80s and 90s. These guys who run global brokerages and stuff, not all of them are, there's a real mix. I used to sit next to guys who went to Harvard and guys who left school at 16, and they're at the same level. It's a leveler. It's based on your ability. But the lack of meritocracy here means that you ain't working at a VC, to be honest, unless you've got Ivy League US education. Seems to be the case.
Okay.
Seems to be the case.
Okay.
Could be wrong. And also, you're very unlikely unless you've got a connection, really, because if you look at the names of the people who work for the VCs, most of them are family to somebody, right?
Or there are now the cases of ex-founders becoming partners at VC firms.
And ex-founders who've overseen mass losses for years on end. That's not somebody I would trust with money. I mean, we've got VCs. What are these VCs being launched for of companies? So if you've got a company that's losing money, you start a VC arm. You're not even you succeed in your own business, and you're going to start a VC arm. You see, the whole thing is gone, to me, is crazy. But here, people get most of their news off TikTok and Instagram, right? So most people actually think that these guys have made a lot of money for everyone. If you'd ask 90% of people before they go to IPO, 90% of Indonesians would tell you GoTo is profitable. They don't know. This is the problem. It's kept very cleverly where these guys have managed to very control media and everything, where Tech in Asia ran something about the top SAS companies in Indonesia. We weren't mentioned, and I'm pretty sure we're the biggest. I'm pretty sure, right? So it doesn't mean anything. It's not journalism. It's paid media. You pay to get on the list. It's like those stupid awards that I get offered all the time that I have to pay $2,000 for.
Do you think it's a closed echo chamber of sorts wherein...
Total. Echo chamber is the exact word. People sit in a room and tell each other how great they are. And the minute somebody comes and not just wants to discuss it with them. I don't know if you know, but I offered to put $100,000 to the charity of some person's choice last year. because they wound me up, right? And I said, I'll put $100,000 in a charity of your choice if you go on TV and debate me. And they didn't answer. In fact, they were asked multiple times by 3 people, and they won't. And that's and that to me is dangerous, because we've got a situation where there's no questioning of these people ever, hardly ever, despite the fact performance is not great. I'm not saying everyone's bad, but yeah, echo chamber. You listen to these people, everyone thinks they're doing really well. I just don't see it. Maybe I'm completely crazy, but I'm looking at the portfolios. Making money out of MSMEs hasn't worked anywhere. It's illogical. We're just copying failures. Grocery deliveries, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, never worked anywhere. So this is not, you don't need the MBA to copy another country which has already failed. Where are the real ideas coming? Because the problem is there should be ITB and UGM looking for the clever kids who built technology. But that's too complicated.
But just again, being a devil's advocate over here, right? Let's say, for example, when you say that no one's made any profits out of MSMEs, right? Or the 10-minute delivery, 15-minute delivery. My contention is that if new founders won't experiment, we will never know if there is an opportunity to make money out of it or not.
That's okay to an extent, but these are things which have failed globally. Okay. And you've got certain companies in Indonesia are investing in all of them. So they're investing in direct competitors.
Give me an example.
I don't want to name names.
Okay.
To be honest, I've done that before, and I've got no personal grudge with anybody. But if you just look at the portfolios of some of the biggest, let's just say the biggest, they're investing in multiple competitors, particularly in MSME space. MSME space, a lot of these companies invest heavily into MSMEs and they put it everywhere. This is pushed by the government, who say that MSME is the big thing. Unfortunately, I'll tell you now, I'm from the north of England, MSMEs don't want digitalising. They don't want digitalising in the north of England because they don't want to pay tax.
Correct.
So this is not...
It just cleans up the system.
So again, this is not rocket science. So people don't like to hear this piece of information, but you are never, ever, ever going to force people on the outer islands to use your software to keep information that they don't need. It's just not going to happen. And like financial inclusion, a lot of these guys are quite happy with cash. This is, people in villages don't need... I'm 48, I've never needed a QR code. It doesn't affect my life. It annoys me when I go into restaurants now and they say, can you please do that? No, I'm in a restaurant, bring me a menu. That's pointless technology. Technology is...
I would agree and disagree on
so why when I go to a meal, do I have to, at my age, I've got good eyes amazingly, but my mum, for example, who was here the other week, why the heck should I have to read a menu on my phone?
I think it's a fair one. No, but I mean...
But why should I? I mean, at the end of the day, this technology is not saving the world. We're being conned that, we've got QR code, we're going to use it in Singapore now. Who cares? This is not some major technological advancement that we're being sold a story. And if you go to certain restaurants in Singapore now and Hong Kong, back to cash only, because for years these point cards subsidized everything.
Okay.
Now they don't subsidize everything, they want cash. So I went to a very nice restaurant in Singapore on Telakaya Road recently, cash only.
Cash only.
Cash only. Or transfer. That's it. Hong Kong is saying, it's obvious, taxi drivers want tips, restaurants want tips. All these ideas that are being thought by all these Ivy League kids, they're like, no one's ever going to leave the house again because of COVID. Most normal people didn't care about COVID. They cared about COVID. They had to do without the driver because the driver and the nanny was the big COVID spreader. But the reality is, no one cared. In the villages, people have bigger problems. So this concept now no one's ever going to go for food anymore. So let's invest in every single cloud kitchen in the world because that's going to work well, isn't it? Because Indonesian people all live in costs. Unless you're rich, you don't live in a big fancy house with a swimming pool, so you want to go to the mall. So as soon as the mall opens, everyone goes, and the cloud kitchen's closed. I mean, this is not rocket science. This is like really basic stuff that seems to be totally ignored. You'll see these podcasts of certain people and they'll talk about all the MSC, the numbers of MSMEs. You're ignoring the basic facts. The facts are, I would bet anyone who walks in that you'll not make money out of SMEs and financial inclusion because a lot of them don't want it. You cannot force people to use all these things. And that is what they're trying to do. And you've seen companies who spent $25 million to make $50,000 revenue. That's enough for me to say, this is ridiculous. No one's interested, give it up. Give your money back to your investors. Stop clowning around. It's not serious. And if you talk to any serious economic professional who's got a background in finance, they will tell you that.
But fair points. But how should a young aspiring entrepreneur who does not have connections, who's not made money, just putting your example out here, right? Who's not made money, wants to get started, right? How can he or she remain sane and get started without raising money from
it's a real challenge, boss.
the angels ventures? Because I mean, for example, as you rightly mentioned, right, the venture capitals are focused on certain areas, are focused on certain sectors. So if someone who's aspiring entrepreneur wants to build something beyond that interested sector, it becomes very difficult.
Very hard.
Very hard, right?
Very hard.
How should they go about it, in your view?
I think this is the biggest. Actually, I talked to some of my partners in this business, and I'm focused on this now. But in the future, might be something we look at, because it's very hard. At the moment, again, where the people like...
But you can't do it at scale, Martyn, right? You can't do it at scale.
I can find the connections to do it at scale from Japan. I probably can.
No, I'm sure. Look, but I mean, sorry to interrupt. I agree. I mean, and the intention's great. I completely agree. But you can do it for 10, 15, 20, right? When we are talking about scale, like for example, and I know of some very passionate, aspiring entrepreneurs in Indonesia, who are like very passionate about certain things which they want to build, but they're not getting that head start. Now, for example, if things have to be done at scale, be it in terms of incubation and that real pre-seed money, right, at scale, what are the fundamental changes which you would want to happen within the ecosystem?
There's a few questions there. First of all, I think this whole incubation thing is slightly crazy. Everyone cannot be a professional footballer.
Sure.
And everyone cannot be a rock star.
Absolutely.
But now everyone who's got a US education and an Ivy League or wealthy parents or worked at Gojek thinks they can now be an entrepreneur. So number one, I think there's a lot of problems with these incubators that are launching 100 companies doing exactly the same. Then, and again, that comes back to, it's very focused here, Jakarta International School, ex-Gojek employees. It's not going to the countryside, the people at ITB and UGN. You don't see, I'll be honest with you, very few people outside a very small network these guys all know each other well. Some of them are related. So these founders, this is not true that the founders of these big startups they're not working class in the first place. They're from a very small section of society, which is different, I think, than other countries. Of course, there's more people. In other countries, I think it's less so, right? I think that's not just here, it's Southeast Asia, everywhere. It's just that kind of economy. So you've got a lack of meritocracy. So the right people, in my opinion, are not running the venture capital funds. The right people the people running the venture capital funds do not have experience. They have no track record of success, actually, most of them.
Okay.
Even the ones at the state-owned enterprise, which is quite scary, really. I mean, you wouldn't get that job in other countries unless you had a 20 years experience or something to run state-owned money as in a venture capital. It just wouldn't happen, not because you know somebody. So, yes, it's a very small world that these guys are operating for starters. And on top of that, they are just creating company after company after company. Plus now, people are leaving startups which have failed, or they're leaving loss-making unicorns and starting VCs. So I've met people who've asked me for connections to Japan because they want to start their own VC. But I'm like, mate, what experience have you got to start a VC? Oh, I used to work at Gojek. It's ridiculous. Who is going to give these? It doesn't make sense. It's illogical. So I can't answer the question. For me, meritocracy, number one, needs to be massively improved because the right people are not in the right jobs. Okay. I have people working for me who are geniuses. They'll never ever get anywhere unless they get pushed by me because they're not part of the elites, right? That's one. That's one. The second is they need to look at proper technological advancement and long term. Long term, I see this Mary Putty fund comes out and says we're going to invest in technological innovation, right? That's what they say. In the same sentence, we're all about exits. It doesn't make sense. It's an oxymoron. It's an oxymoron. You cannot constantly launch business after business with the concept of exiting and expect a success. And you can't pay your founder 200, 300 million a month and expect him to do anything but take the money.
I know quite a few founders, yeah. I don't think they get paid this heavily.
Well, quite a lot do.
Quite a lot do?
Yes.
Okay.
Way over the top. But that's the different issue. But the point is, it's not set up to, I came here, and I had my own resources, but it's scary. You go to work every day, you don't get paid. You're putting your own money in. I tell you what, it focuses you. It
humbles you as well,
It
right?
focuses you and humbles you, and you've got to focus on it. And that's why probably I get wound up when people call themselves investors when they haven't put $1 into something. But that was, not everyone can do it. I did put my own money up, and I've discussed this with several people. I think the opportunity in Indonesia is outside the very small group of people who are just, as far as I can see, there is a crazy amount of losses amongst the same group of people, and the same people keep turning up. That business is gone, I'll do another business. 5 times founder. They list themselves as 5 times founder on social media. It's like it's a badge of honor. To me, that just means you're not very good. It's what I'm saying.
You couldn't get it right in the first 5 times.
It's like announcing your X about 10 companies. That to me is you're not a loyal employee. That's the problem. I am so, I guess, having lived in Japan and worked in a regulated business and worked my way up from zero to quite senior, I think I look at things total opposite way. So when people are like 3 times founder, 5 times founder, and then they're 28, I just think, wow. When people listen like more than 5 jobs on their social media, I just think, ooh, it just sounds to me like dodgy. It's suspicious. I think it needs to be more inclusive, yeah. But that's going to be very difficult because we know that the same people will maintain power at the top in all the big companies, and most of their kids want to be in the venture capital world. They don't want to work for their businesses. That might change because I believe a lot of them are losing a lot of money doing that. So I think the kids might be brought back into line and told, no, you're working for the real business here.
Do you think corrections are going to happen in 2024? Be it in terms of valuations, in terms of investments, fund size, business models?
I just, honestly, mate, I look at the model here and I don't know why an LP would give money at the moment to these guys. At least get one return of capital first. People say it's controversial, but it's not, it's common sense.
But a typical fund's tenure itself is 10 years.
Well, that's
right?
fine. That's fine. But when we look at the underlying portfolio and we see the whole problem, you can't just keep them giving them more money on their made-up numbers. It doesn't make sense. I understand that it needs time, but the problem is they had the 10 best years in the history of the world to invest, and it seems that they're underwater. I look at the portfolios. I look at, everyone talks about Jeff Bezos investing in Indonesia. He's invested twice and they both went wrong. So he's not going to come back, is he? That's the problem. It's not giving the whole ecosystem a good reputation.
Correct.
It's ridiculous. Everyone's we got Serena Williams. Well done. She won't come back, will she? I was reading about Jeff Bezos. His 2 investments went belly up. But who's giving him the advice to do this? Because I live here and I know, but I don't need to live here because looking at any small economy, digitalizing certain parts of society is very difficult. And just because the population is big means nothing. It's like, there's a reason private banks, like we talk about digitalization and all these, you talk to the top guys in the top banks here, they will say the reason that they don't sell to these clients anyway. Number one, the clients don't really want them, but the other reason is you can't make money from these clients. Why do private banks want people to have $2 million minimum? Because that's how you make money. Whether people like it or not, a numbers game doesn't matter because clients cost you at a certain level. So we've got a huge population, it'll work, that doesn't matter. Well, all it matters is you lose more per customer. So a lot of these things which have been set up based on the size of the population is going to find out that the cost of the product will always be more. And the focus has never been the technology, the focus has always been the valuation. So the infrastructure of many of these businesses is really poor.
So you think that is the biggest problem, that focus has always been on the valuation rather than the product, profit, revenue?
There is several companies in this country that I don't know how they got away with it, who were valued at over $100 million without any revenue. So that's, to me, must be an insider job, must be friends and friends, because it's illogical. It is illogical. Number one, this is not somebody who's coming to you as been a superstar in something. This is somebody who's probably just worked at another company, right? So this is not, you're not hiring like the top trader at Goldman Sachs or something, right? You're hiring a guy who's like in his mid to late 20s, friends of somebody, right? Then you're gonna say, oh, well, I've got this idea. It's an idea. And you're gonna give him 20, 30, 40 million dollars for this idea, which, oh, by the way, failed in other countries. You telling me they're not friends? because I think they are. Because I don't think there's any sensible justification. And if you talk to the head of, so one of my partners is the head of probably the second biggest hedge fund in Asia.
Okay.
They manage money for everybody. I mean, we're talking much bigger than any of the VCs here by several times. They don't understand it. But they're in the mid-50s because you don't get to be a top hedge fund manager when you're 25. Because no one will trust you with the money. It doesn't work like that. You've got to have a track record. It doesn't make a difference who your friends are. It's a different model.
Why do you think this is happening? I mean, look, if you look at the LPs of the largest venture capital funds, there is generally sovereign funds.
I think in the past
there are pension funds.
Of course.
There are retirement funds. And I mean, I'm pretty sure the LPs are a bunch of intelligent people.
We've got two sets of things here. We've got the Indonesian market and an external market, right? You've got to remember, Tiger Global have lost most of their profits for the last 20 odd years, in the last couple of years, right? They've had huge, because everything was overvalued. And I think people jumped in on the what do you call it? Fear of missing out. They got FOMO. It got silly. So the best example was the Ontario Teachers Pension Fund. I used to meet them in Japan, and they were one of the most stringent. For some reason, they have a different rule for listed securities and IPOs, real IPOs, to venture capital. Because to find out they were an investor in FTX made me laugh. Because I just remember thinking they were the most difficult, and Temasek as well. I can't explain that. That's a FOMO. I'm not sure if they're investing here, but I would love to sit down with somebody, but nobody wants to, for somebody to tell me why you think all this MSME and financial is ever going to make money. Just tell me, I'm happy to listen. But no one will, the fact is no one will enter into a discussion about it.
Because it opens up the can of worms.
Can of worms that it's not very easy to make money. It's failed. 15-minute grocery deliveries has failed everywhere in the world. And everywhere in the world doesn't have an alpha mount on every corner. It's illogical. It won't make money. I don't being hard on anyone because some of them I know. And then they pivot to, I saw the other week some 15-minute grocery deliveries had pivoted to chicken, selling chicken. Now, I'm not being funny. You think they're going to beat JAPFA and CP Corp? It's silly. They're not disrupting anything. They're going to get murdered. It's not possible. A lot of the disruption in Indonesia is not true because the big boys would do it already if they thought they could make money from it. Disruption is real technology that you can do, no one else can do. Now, there's some early ones here like Gojek. Yeah, great. Great. However, let's get it right. It's great if it's considered, it's lifted up the open communities, right? It's not great as a business at all. It's just not great as a business. There is very few that are great as a business. It is great because it provided jobs for people, but there's two sides to that. If you go to countryside, Bali, there's signs everywhere, no Gojek. They don't want it because they want OJ.
They don't want to pay the commission.
They don't want to pay the commission. So again, there's an argument against everything. People will tell you it's uplifted the local communities. I agree with that, actually. But there is things that people don't tell you. And one of the big ones is, even in my hometown before, they tried to introduce cash only. And it didn't last very long. Cashless only. They couldn't get workers in the restaurants because of the tips.
Yeah.
People wouldn't work there.
True.
Simple. But so what I'm saying, I'm just looking at logical things. That's what I'm really confused. You're giving $200 million valuation, there's no revenue, and the idea has already failed in other countries. Would you not give them a couple of million and see how it worked first, and at least get it? Oh yeah, that's working. Come on. Be careful what I say. But there's companies that have spent $20 million for hardly any revenue. That's pretty hard to do unless the money's been siphoned out. It's pretty hard to do. If you put the money in the bank, you get more revenue than this. It doesn't make sense. This is not saying anything. People say it's controversial. It's not controversial. If you talk to anyone who's got a background in finance, everyone will say the same. Everyone I know in my world agrees with me. No one understands. I don't know anyone who understands this in the real world. And that's why we have a two-tier system here. The VC and the startups all go to their shaking hands and going to their Deal Street Asia events, and Tech in Asia cover them, and Tech in Asia aren't interested in me because I don't pay them. You know what I mean? And I don't have Tech in Asia. It was invested in before by the VCs. So of course it never comes out and says this is a bad investment. I've noticed Tech in Asia recently, they've sold out, right?
Yeah.
It's owned by a Singapore business now. First, they are now more aggressive. I've noticed that they are covering. They've covered a few scandals recently. They never used to cover scandals because their paymasters wouldn't let them. So I know that's the same for media all over the world, but you've got that group of people, and then you've got the serious business people. as I said this morning, I had breakfast with some of these guys, CEOs of major companies. The ambassador of Ukraine was there. These people aren't going to listen to that, and that's the problem. These guys are used to people adulation.
Yeah,
they're not used to confronting people who go, just explain that to me. So if you get the CEOs of these major companies, who a lot of them self-made, particularly Bhumi self-made, like the CEO of Danone or Friesland Camplan or any of these companies, right? Indosat, Indian guy. They're not gonna sit there and go, wow, you're amazing. They're gonna sit there and go, well, hang on a minute, explain that to me, please. And that's the issue. No one wants to do it. So that's why it's two-tier system. And the problem with that is, how do you sell to your clients? Because I'm telling you now, in the world I live in, this is a bit of a joke. So I'm not an outsider in the people I had breakfast with this morning. No one understands. So it does seem a bit like a rich kid's playground with a few helpers. Now, in the US, of course, it's probably different. It's not, usually in the US, I believe, it's ex-Goldman Sachs guys who end up working at Sequoia and stuff. I'm not saying that means they're great. I'm saying it means they've had experience.
Sure.
It's not just somebody's kid. You know what I mean? So, or somebody he's friends with. That doesn't qualify you to be a major money manager. And this market, again, another example is size of funds, size of tickets. This is a huge problem here. So my friends in Singapore run a fund called Jin Capital. It's one of the best performing Japanese equity long-short fund. They closed the fund at $500 million. They closed it at $500 million with 2 times leverage, so it's $1 billion. Japanese equity is one of the most liquid markets in the world. They are 2 of the most well-known people and have been doing it for 25 years. But they decided that if they had more than $1 billion, it would be a drag on performance. So let's give $1 billion to a guy who's got 6 months of McKinsey experience and 6 months at Credit Suisse in Singapore. That's a good idea, right? Because he'll be in a highly illiquid market that we have to give 50 million to people who've never made $1 in their life. The tickets are too big. The tickets are way too big. And that's the problem with them SME companies. 4 or 5 of them all dead. They're dead, they're never going to make money. Some of them have already given the money back to the investors. That's what they should all do. But as you said, some of them have already exited. How can you exit something that's made less than $50,000 revenue? It doesn't make sense to any adult. The adult in the room needs to stand up and say, excuse me, but the adult in the room is not allowed. Because I'm never going to get invited to Deal Street, and they're never going to get invited to the place I go. So when we try to discuss things, they do. I mean, you see these guys, they will go away around. They'll do anything but talk to somebody who doesn't agree with them, which I think is not healthy. I think one of the problems we've got...
It's not healthy for sure.
It's not healthy. We've got backslapping. These VC conferences are more like celebrities. People turn up, everyone shakes their hand. They're more Instagram personalities than they are investors. If you're working for a regulated company, if you look at my BOD, you'll see one of the guys on there, he's huge. He can't have Instagram and act like a celebrity. It would be regulatory, all kinds of nightmares. He can't go around telling people who his investors are and stuff. It's highly not allowed. I don't really understand how. I think they're very clever to raise as much money they have. They're very good at raising money. How have you raised money when you've got so many hockey stick projections that have been going on and on and on and on? I don't know. I don't know, but at some point, people have got to look at it and go, right. And I think they are, by the way, because I had lunch last week with a very, quite a powerful guy here, an ex-BUMN guy, top level. And he's now talking about, he's got a lot of connections, and he's now talking about doing his own startup company. And funny, he's got like a B2C, and he went to some of the startup VCs, and he's connected this guy. And the VC said to him, he said, we're not doing a B2C at the moment.
Right now.
It's a bit expensive. So I think it's changing. I think people are realizing, B2B takes a bit of time, but it's sustainable. You're not sitting there running about runway. You're not sat there thinking bridging loans. I mean, people here, it's kind of so crazy. A few weeks ago, one of the startups here took a bridging loan. Obviously a bridging loan because last year they raised 15 times more. And they're announcing it in social media. I would keep that very quiet. Because that to me means you've blown the money that you told everyone you had for 2 years, and you still have no product market fit. And I know that because I know the stuff that the problem is now people are leaving. People are leaving and people are talking. And everybody knows a lot of these companies have no product market fit, and they only worked when they were giving the software away. So to me, that's a problem. So it's not easy, but I don't know, because all these economies are different, right? It's a lot earlier here.
Sure.
Long term, I think you're going to have to, a meritocracy is the only way, and to bring in professionals who've got experience, maybe not in the VC because it's new, but that's what the VCs did in the US, and that's what the VCs did in Europe, right? They brought in the guys who already had experience. But, you know, I think if you look at like these top guys, like Don Valentine, he was over 40 when he started the company. Yep. These guys are not kids, you know what I mean? They're not, they had it.
But I don't think there's anything wrong with a kid starting a startup.
It's not that. It's not the startup I'm talking about. It's the VC money.
The VC
money.
Okay.
No, there's nothing wrong.
That makes sense. No, that I completely agree.
There's nothing wrong with anyone starting a startup, but the selection should be based on the quality of the business, correct. Not just it's somebody's mate.
No,
I mean, there's no way in the world a normal person could convince a VC to put $30 to $40 million into a company with no revenue. It's not possible.
True.
Doesn't make sense. True. So there's got to be some potential. I mean, I don't want to accuse, but it even sounds like kickback because it doesn't make sense.
Sounds like a kickback.
It does though. It sounds like a kickback. It doesn't make sense.
Okay.
It doesn't. Do you think it makes sense?
I mean, look, if you look at the paper, if you just put the numbers in a normal Excel sheet, very normal Excel sheet, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It seems like maybe I am missing something. Maybe something which I don't know.
But the thing is, no one's willing to tell you what you're missing, and that's the sign to me I'm not. Mm-hmm. I've offered myself openly to discuss things. I've been pulled from things before because people ask me to be pulled from things, and I'm not. I don't want to argue with anybody. Sure. I want to discuss, but people just. One of the frustrations I have, people and I guess I have a voice. Like sometimes when I say people, I find it quite rude to other people on social media, and I maybe have a voice to say, "What are you talking about?" Because I don't really care. I don't rely on these guys. But again, business is difficult here. I think the potential here is huge. But I think it would be great if VCs moved into, instead of just copying, and you don't need an MBA to copy. You know, you now realize what doesn't work. So focus and I think more spreading. You know what I mean? Not just focused on Jakarta International School and ex-unicorn members, and that's basically what you see happening, right? It's a very small community. It's like Prince Harry, right? Prince Harry failed his exam to Eton about 11 times before his parents said, "Get it, go in the army," right? Yeah. That's the point. Just because you come from a certain background doesn't mean you're going to be the best at anything, right? It doesn't mean it. You might be, of course you might be, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But to just plant everything to those guys, and then all them guys who've got good ideas, maybe, and have not got any access. They just don't have the access. There's a lot of people who won't have the access to it. But I think that there's too much focus on being every single person cannot be an entrepreneur. This is crazy. Seems to be what everyone wants to be. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I invested in another company and then got involved because I couldn't trust other people. To be honest. I never started off with I was quite happy to sit in an office.
It looks very fancy from the outside, and I'm just gonna share my personal example, right? I don't come from money, right? I come from a proper lower middle class in India. Yeah. I've worked my ass off to become whatever I could in my professional career, and I had this itch, right? That hey, listen, I want to do this. I want to do something in media, and short form works really well now, given how our attention spans have gone. So let's do something in short form. It was out of passion.
It's a bit long list though. It needs to be TikTok here, I think. This election's been decided by TikTok.
It was I was very passionate about it. And of course it looked very fancy from the outside. Yeah. And once you start doing this, you're like, oh shit, this is so hard. It is so hard. I get sleepless nights. Every month, as soon as you're reaching the payroll.
But you don't get sleepless nights if you're paying yourself a massive salary, and that's the problem. And that is the issue we have.
I'm probably making 1/5 of what I was making in my previous job.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
So and I think that's another issue. People keep saying, they deserve salary. I said, hang on a minute. The founders, their idea is to get this business to $100 million and get 50 of it. That's what maybe I'm wrong, that's what I view. And remember, most of these founders are ex-McKinsey, maybe very short time, but they're not poor. You know, you don't see many poor founders. There is some, You very rarely,
Sure.
you see it. It's from a small network of people because, again, that's the access to the capital.
Sure.
It's the access to capital because when I first came, before people realised, I got offered in on deals through friends, buy into this and sell it to somebody else later. And a lot of these people do, these angels here. That's how I think it works. The angels who are kids of people buy in very early and then they sell to the VC within a year or something, right? And the VC is their friends. And maybe their parents are the LPs. It's very confusing when I look at it from the outside. How? Because there's a lot of these like families here, they're angels. So, and then they try to get the VCs involved, right? Which is great. But my question is where the ticket size is so big for things which have no track record. And then you look at other countries. Peer-to-peer lending. Have you ever lent money to anyone in this country?
I haven't.
Well, I have.
I have.
You don't get it back, basically.
You don't lend, you give it away.
Yeah, and that's a problem with peer-to-peer lending, right? And I do feel sorry for some of these guys who are getting outed now. Like recently with one of the peer-to-peer lending, again, I'm not naming names, but it's been all over the media. These guys are under massive pressure to do this because everyone is in on this. Because if you look at the performance of the VCs, I don't believe anywhere near what they're saying it is. So I think if from the top down, we're going to have multiple people who are going to be pulled up in the next few months, years, for like over-exaggerating everything. Because it's obvious that this isn't working, because it's obvious that you can't lend money at 20% and get your money back. It's not rocket science. Again, these are all that's what confuses me. It's basic stuff, man. And I would like to, I don't know enough about it, but I think we all got a bit carried away with, technology is great, but let's stop the fad investments. AI, yeah, ChatGPT is great, but it's not, how can I make money out of it? OpenAI burns money. Everybody knows an expert on it. It's like AI bro, it used to be crypto bro, or EV bro. How many EV companies have closed in India already? No one is saying that EV is a bad idea, but people just like starting an EV company, building a prototype and saying it's worth 100 million. It's just fake. It's not real. So
I think on that note, I think we should close this chat. We're already running out of time. But it was a very intriguing discussion, Martyn. You're the first entrepreneur on our podcast who's non-venture backed, completely bootstrapped. Of course, friends, family investments.
Yeah.
That's a different story. I think we're gonna do more of this year. We're gonna bring in a lot of bootstrap founders as well, because we want to hear and understand the other side of startup world as well. I can understand your anguish to a large extent. I think more than anguish, it is the fact that you are not really able to see a clear picture, which a lot of us are not, including me.
No, it's not anguish. To be honest, it doesn't affect me. But if people ask my opinion, I will just say what I believe. I don't, as you know, I have no script for this or anything. I'm not. I'm used to healthy debate in my previous career. Sure. I just say what I think. I've not named any companies. I've got nothing against anybody.
And healthy debate is needed.
I think it's healthy.
It is needed.
I think it's a good idea. What I would say to these guys, and a lot of them, is they're right in one thing. B2B and B2G is hard. And 5 years it takes to really establish yourself. But when you look at a lot of the other companies, they're still losing money after 10 years. So it's not, and we've actually got product that's actually got IP. This is not just like, it's not just an app. It's actually IP. So the growth potential, I believe, of what we do now is where we really track out when we get everyone distributing our product. Mm-hmm. And now we've got this SAS model, our costs are much lower on the development side. So we spend on R&D, but our costs are coming down. Sure. But without even trying for them to come down, and our revenue is going up. So
just one last question.
Yeah.
Just one last question. Do you think ever that you're gonna raise money from venture capital, let's say a few years down the line, to quickly expand?
I think it'll be more private equity, to be honest. I have a very strong connections within Japan actually. Having spent a long time there, I was, some of the major guys I'm very close to, sure, like the top guys. So some of them are involved, like the global head of Nomura is an investor in my company, and I'm still the biggest investor in our company. Sure. And these guys know this. Yeah. So this also impact, me.
No, it absolutely does, right? Because you put your life savings out there.
It's quite hard when you've got, for me, the problem is, I've talked here to Saratoga, they're great guys, right? Again, I'll pump that name because they're good guys. And Yeah, we might work together in the future. We just got to get a bit bigger because they're not really a startup company.
Yeah.
But they know me, so they asked me to present the product. They like what we do. It's too early. I would say never. I think it's harder for me to get one of these young kids on the board who's going to be telling us acting like we're idiots, because they post indirect attacks on social media about people in their portfolio. That would, as I say, my partners are much bigger than they are, so it would upset them. You know what I mean? So I think
that's fair. Yeah.
I mean, that's what upset me when I some of the stuff. But I think it's on the venture side, it's probably hard, and I think honestly speaking, we're a bit people have missed the boat on us really. I think now we've got quite a strong revenue. It's getting bigger. We are now distributing our product with third parties. I had a company approach me recently from the Netherlands wanting to buy 51% of the company. I turned it down. It would make me quite wealthy. Sure. But I turned it down because I already had money when I came here and I want to really see this through. My plan was not to do this, but now I've done it, I really want to prove a point. I want to get it to the right level.
On that note, wishing you luck, wishing you success. This was very intriguing, very intellectually invigorating conversation. I think on this podcast at least, we haven't really spoken on these lines ever.
No one does in Indonesia. It's like the elephant in the room. Nobody wants to talk about things.
No, but as a media company, it's our job.
Of course.
Right.
I agree with you. This is what I think they blocked me now. But the guys who run Tech in Asia, I just pull them up on things like you just listed these companies as the top. Realistically, I know how we have 150 people, mate. You've listed the top company, you've got 8 people and no clients. It's silly. At least get close to sense. But that's the problem. I'm not bothered. They don't have to put me on there. But of course, I will make that comment.
Which is fair, right? You absolutely deserve to. All right, Chief. Thank you so much.